Zooey Mama. I'm here today to talk about Madam Web and whether I think she's going to be worth chasing after and picking up, or if she might be a bit of a bust. And I know this card has a lot of excitement. She has a lot of hype around her. I'm a bit concerned that she's overrated, overhyped, and could potentially flop. So I'm going to go into why that is in this video. But on September 10th, Madam Web is coming to spotlights alongside Silk and Alioth. Madam Web herself is a 2-cost 1-powered card with a very interesting ongoing ability that you can move one of your other cards away from her location each turn. So even if it's a card that can't normally move, you play it on her lane, you can move it to one of the other 2 lanes, and you're going to be able to choose which lane it moves to. Okay, it's kind of like you're giving a card, Nightcrawler's ability. You just let it move away once. So let's get into some of Madam Web's best synergies, but also her biggest counters. So for key synergies, we are looking at something like Hercules. Okay, now Hercules has always struggled finding a home in Marvel Snap because while he can move another card away, he always needs something to first move that card into his lane. Well, with Madam Web, you could play a move card on her lane, such as Human Torch, who's also great synergy, or Vulture, anything that likes moving. Madam Web can let the card move into Hercules' lane, and then Hercules can kick it back out into the 3rd lane or back into Madam Web's lane, so you can then move it back and forth again. Okay, obviously move things like I mentioned. Really love this effect. You can just stack up moves really quickly. And then even something like Angela, anything that likes having extra space on its location, Madam Web gives that ability to every card you play on her lane. Now, in terms of some things you don't want to see if you're playing Madam Web, Red Guardian is awful. I mean, if your opponent has Red Guardian, it's basically going to hit Madam Web every single time because she only has 1 power. Even if she powers up your Human Torch or something, she herself will only have 1. You play Madam Web on 2, there's a good chance you're going to see a Red Guardian come down on turn 3. She can actually help out with some clog cards, but if your opponent is just clogging too many lanes, full on clog, like with Debris, you're going to be in trouble if you have no space to move cards, or if it's more obvious the location you're going to move the cards to. And then lastly, Rogue is another one right on curve. You play Madam Web on 2, on turn 3, your opponent hits you with Rogue, and that can be good value even if they're not playing move. They can now just shift cards around on their side to kind of surprise you. So these are all tough counters, and they're right on curve too, which is a bit annoying. Now let's get down into the details of the good and the bad for Madam Web. First up with the good. She might be the best move enabler ever, okay? That's because 1, she helps cards moves that normally can't, but she can do it more than once. Remember that she's an ongoing. So if you play her right on turn 2, that means she can move a card you played on her lane over the course of turn 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, that's 4 total moves. And so that's very good because you can move things that normally need help. The Vulture, the Human Torch, the Spider-Man 2099, whatever it may be, whereas something like Ghost Spider, is only moving 1 thing. Cloak, if you play Cloak in a lane, you can then move 3 things to Cloak's lane because Cloak is also taking up a space there. So Cloak can only move 3 things. Most of the time, Madam Web can move 4. It's spread out over different turns. It's not at once, and it can be turned off, but it can move more than Cloak. Move decks do love cheap enablers. That's another problem Hercules has, is he came out as a 4-cost card. Even as 3 costs, he's kind of expensive. When you're focusing on moving things, you really want the cards just to be as cheap as possible. You don't care too much about their stats. You're really just trying to move it. And she can help move decks against some clog. If your opponent is running just partial clog, maybe they played Kate Bishop with the Acid Arrow, maybe they just have White Widow with the Widow's Kiss, you can move that 1 location over if you played Madam Web on that lane. So she can help free up a bit of space unless you're against full clog. And then just surprise moves. Even if you're not getting huge power value from the moves, your opponent may not know where you're going to move your Ajax, right? If you had Ajax on her lane for whatever reason, they don't know where you're going to move it. She might just be able to help a big card dodge a Shang-Chi. I mean, it's going to be really tough for your opponent if you can give some big card the vision ability type of thing. But what about the bad? Okay, again, on paper, we see so much good. We see so much upside. Like, she can just move everything over and over, do it each turn. It's not an on reveal. It keeps happening. But what about the bad? Well, there's some things we got to talk about here, okay? There is some bad when it comes to Madam Web. First up, a 2-1 is crap stats, okay? That's horrible. There are not many two-cost cards in the game that have just one power, right? Pixie's one of them. Pixie tries to do something huge and basically sit at the core of a deck and try to make you just pop off, right? Kind of like a Mr. Negative type thing. So I compared her to Cloak in that she can often move one more card than Cloak if you are able to play the cards on her lane and have a good curve and all that. Well, Cloak has 3 more power as well, okay? So it's not like she's just a better Cloak. You're losing 3 power. You're essentially losing 2 energy worth of power, right, at 2-3. So that's huge. Her stats suck. It does require board space still. If you're moving cards away to the left and to the right, and you can't move them back in somehow, well, then the left and right locations, if you have Madam Web in the middle, they're starting to get full, okay? Or whatever locations Madam Web isn't in, if those get clogged, she can no longer move stuff away. And move decks, this is just a common thing they have to deal with. If you have locations popping out squirrels or the raptors or ninjas, it becomes really annoying, okay? Board space is really critical. And is she just stuck to move decks? She's obviously good with move, she's obviously meant with move, but can she be played in more places? If you're not a move player, can you get value from chasing after, getting, and playing Madam Web? If she's stuck to move and you don't play move, maybe she has no value for you. Okay, so that's a big question here. As I mentioned, Red Guardian is insane. Week 1, his stocks are going to be going huge. You're going to see a lot of Red Guardian right away. A bit of Rogue as well, but I think Red Guardian is going to be the number one thing, the number one counter card you see once Madam Web comes out. Even the week after with Aranya, who's also a 1-powered card that's actually activate, you're going to see a lot of Red Guardian. Okay, so be prepared. Be wary. She is an easy target. She can move other cards away. She cannot move herself away, so she cannot dodge the Red Guardian. And then what if the move doesn't add huge value? You know, what if she ends up being, this ability to move each turn is decent or even good, but it's not insane value? Well, you've got a 2-1. If you're playing 2-1, the value potential needs to be insane. It's like Pixie, okay? You need a really big payoff. If it's not a really big payoff, you know, that kind of reminds me of War Machine. War Machine has so much hype before he came out. Okay, I talked a lot in my War Machine video. Same thing, the title, the thumbnail, I said, hey, he's overrated. And, some people even commented that I was just a dummy. I was doing it for clickbait and, Jeff was never going to be seen again because War Machine was coming out. The community got it wrong, okay? This could be a similar thing. It's so easy to get hyped on a card. In reality, we don't know until the card comes out. Now, some cards, you can just tell on paper that their floor is really good. And we're going to look at this visually next with Madam Web's ceiling and her floor. But some cards have a floor where they're just good stats, where they're just going to be, decent. So they range from decent to great. If Madam Web's move doesn't add huge value, if you're better off just playing Cloak, she's just not going to see any play, okay? I mean, if she doesn't work in move decks as a staple 2-cost card, she's going to see 0 play because she's meant for move decks. Or if she works well in move decks and she's basically a staple, but move decks cannot push to becoming meta, they don't have, what it takes, they're getting countered, they're getting outpowered, and they're not meta, Madam Web doesn't have huge value, okay? If move is not meta, Madam Web could easily be a flop. Or if Madam Web can't be a staple 2-cost in a move deck, even if move is meta, then Madam Web would be a flop, okay? She needs, 100% needs to find homes in move decks, and those same move decks need to be really competitive. If she does not help them get there, and especially 1 week after when we have Aranya coming out, who's an activate that synergizes with power and move, if the two of them don't help move archetype get to the top or near the top of the meta, Madam Web could easily flop, and she would see virtually no play like War Machine. Okay, I have higher hopes for her. She seems really fun. I'm hoping she's really good, but there's a potential that this card flops. It is a risk. Okay, so let's look at that a bit more visually, but this is where my concerns come from. I am a bit worried that this card, even though it looks so exciting, it looks so good on paper, might just be a bust. So in terms of Madam Web's ceiling, or her at her reasonable worst, As we talked about, it's just that the move doesn't matter. Maybe you played her on turn 6, you didn't get to move anything. Maybe you played her earlier, but you weren't moving anything that powers up. You didn't have your Human Torch down, or your Vulture down, or anything, or you moved something that could already move itself, or it just went to a location that didn't change anything. Well, she's a 2-1. A 2-1 is not viable, nor is it competitive. A 2-1 that does nothing absolutely sucks. This is a bad floor. This is about as worse as it gets. Grandmaster had a floor of 2-0. He flopped. This is just one more power than that. Okay, this is not a good floor. But the ceiling does sound very nice. Okay, the ceiling is that you move great targets each turn because of Madam Web. Okay, you played Human Torch turn 1, for example. Turn 2, you played Madam Web on Torch's lane. Turn 3, you move that torch out, and you played Vulture on her lane. Turn 4, you move that Vulture out, right? You're just benefiting all these cards. You're playing them on her lane. She's moving them out, maybe into Hercules' lane. And this would be a game-winning enabler. If you get a great curve, you get the combos off, it's possible that her moves and her, once a turn move enables your deck to just like double or triple in power and win you the game. That would be overpowered if she did it every time, but it's move, it's combo based, it's a bit finicky. Where is she on average? It's hard to tell. We're gonna have to wait and see. My guess is if you're playing a full move decks, you are hoping to move 2 good targets per game, whether it's actually 2 different cards or the same card twice. Maybe you play Human Torch on her, you move him away, and then you Ghost Spider him back in, or you Doctor Strange him back in, and then Madam Web can move him away again. Okay, you're trying to move cards out, back in, and then out again. So that's the hope, and I think you can do it with 2 cards or the same card twice, in which case she's still 2-1, that gets countered by Red Guardian, but you would enable an extra, maybe 2 power-ups, which on Human Torch is huge, even on Vulture, that's a bunch of extra power. And so I think you can do that if you're playing a move deck. It's always going to be finicky where sometimes the draws don't happen, but I think you're hoping for this average. I think this is a nice average. If she's here, I think that is competitive. I'm not sure it's overpowered, but I think that would put her at a really strong competitive level, have her be a staple 2-cost card in move archetypes. If you are enjoying this video, remember to hit the like, hit that thumbs up down below, and subscribe to the channel if you have not already, because we cover every single new card in Marvel Snap, as well as the month's Spotlight ratings and a Series 4 and Series 5 buy guide tier list. We're all about helping you plan how to spend your very precious resources. So to start off with my 3 decks for Madam Web, first up is actually my non-move list, okay? Madam Web is the only move card in this deck. This is my most creative one. It's very easy to go with move, and we'll look at that later. But I'm actually most interested to see if she can work outside of move, okay? I think if she does work outside of move, that could do a lot for her. So this is my big cats list. We've got the cats Zabu, White Tiger, and Black Panther in here. We also have Wong. And I think this is really interesting. Normally Wong is a sitting duck, right? If you played Wong, you're worried about your opponent playing Enchantress, playing Rogue, playing Cosmo, Red Guardian, maybe moving him away with Magneto. I mean, there's just so many things that can go wrong. Well, if you have Madam Web already on the location, let's say turn 2, turn 4, you play Wong on Madam Web, turn 5, your opponent can't Cosmo there. Okay, if they play Cosmo there, but you move Wong away, well, now that Cosmo doesn't work. If they play Rogue, Rogue would hit one of the 2, but if you already move Wong away, they don't know where to stop your Wong play, even if they have a counter, So that turn 5, you move Wong to one of the 2 other lanes. If your opponent assumed you're going to move, it's still 50-50 guess, which sucks for them. And then you move him away, and you just play White Tiger or Black Panther. Okay, if you get Black Panther really big on top of Madam Web, you can move him away to a solo location and hit him with Arnim Zola. I mean, I really like the idea to be able to start playing these combo pieces, but because they get countered so easily by a bunch of your opponent's cards, you can then move it away and pull off the combo in a different location. I think this has potential. It's still combo heavy. It's still going to have some games where you just don't get the good draws or you might get countered, but I'm really interested in trying to make Madam Web work outside of a standard move list. Next up, we've got another deck with both Madam Web and Symbiote Spider-Man. This is Tucker's Symbiote Force. He just posted a video recently on this one. He used it to climb to Infinite insanely fast. And I went in here, I took out Nico Minoru, and I put in Madam Web. Okay, so we are looking at a Shuri Phoenix Force deck with also Nimrod, so we can look to do like Symbiote Spider-Man into Nimrod, or we can look to do standard move stuff. Okay, we have Human Torch in here. We've got Phoenix Force. Madam Web can help that Torch power up. She can help move the multiple man. She can also help isolate cards, so you can only destroy one card at a time, so you know what Phoenix Force is going to bring back, even if your opponent tried to clog you up or play White Widow or something. So I think she could be a nice enabler in here, just to help the combos go off a bit more smoothly. And then last up, I've got the moviest of the moviest list. Okay, this is the move deck that also uses beasts. You try and get a really big Human Torch, Dagger, and or Vulture. You can then beast these cards back to hand, which is really good for Human Torch to protect him from Shadow King, from Killmonger, even Shang-Chi, and it helps you also avoid priority. So then on turn 6, your opponent has priority, they play first, they reveal, you can now play your move cards again, all powered up, and you're not worried about that Shadow King or Shang-Chi and all that stuff. So I think Madam Web, this is going to be the first home almost everybody tries her in, right? Standard move list. There's some flexibility. You could try Spider-Man 2099 amongst a few other things. There's some replacements you can make here. Now, to break down her Spotlight Week as a whole, again, September 10th, we have Madam Web, Silk, and Alioth in Spotlights. These are all of the Spotlight variants that will be in there as well. In terms of being competitive, it's just okay. Now, we don't know where Madam Web's going to fall. Okay, as I mentioned, I think she has a lot of hype. I think she's got good potential, but it's possible she flops. We're excluding her. She's the new card. We don't know until she comes out. Okay, we simply do not know the cold, hard facts. So we're looking at Silk and Alioth. Alioth is in a good spot right now. He's as a 6'10". He's hitting. He's taking out a lot of combo stuff. He's a strong card. Silk is basically the opposite. She had, her 15 minutes of fame back when Silky Smooth was a thing, and then she was out, and she never really came back in. We now have a couple 1-5s in the game, so why you would play a 2-5, I don't know. She's just not worth it at all. Okay, you don't need to chase after Silk. She's pretty useless, very, very replaceable. So we've got a really good pickup in Alioth, a really bad pickup in Silk, okay? And so it's kind of right in the middle for being competitive. The variants, I think it's also just okay. And again, I really think it's Alioth carrying this one. This Madam Web variant looks very, very, very similar to her base art. I mean, for a base art and Spotlight, they are almost identical. It's like the closest, most similar looking base art and Spotlight variants I've seen ever, maybe, okay? So they just looks too similar. The Silk one is fine. I kind of like it, but Silk has a lot of really good variants. So I think they're already just out there, the amazing Silk variant. So I'm not too crazy about this one compared to others. This Alioth variant, however, I think is awesome. If I picked up this variant, I would not be sad at all. I hope I pick it up on my way to open Madam Web if I decide to open for her, because it's awesome. I love it. I love the kind of the teeth coming out, the lightning. I'm excited to see how it looks animated. So again, I think that Alioth and the Alioth variant are basically carrying this whole Spotlight Week. If Madam Web ends up being not so good, you're just chasing after Alioth here. If Madam Web ends up being really good, then you're chasing after Madam Web and Alioth here, right? You're basically forgetting about Silk. Now to give my final ratings and predictions on Madam Web herself. Okay, I've mentioned a lot of good about her in this video. I've also mentioned a lot of bad, and she does have me worried. Now, in terms of being fun, I think she's great fun. Move decks are extremely fun. Okay, whenever we've played Move, it's a good time. I remember playing a ton of Move, in Series 2 when you start getting all these Move cards. It's fun. It's kind of difficult to play. It can be challenging, but it's just a good time. It's surprising your opponents. Crazy things can happen. It's nice to see. In terms of being flexible, she does seem bad. I mentioned that one list that actually wasn't a move list, my Big Cats one, where I'm hoping that she can actually help rescue these normally very vulnerable cards like Wong, that she can kind of protect them by moving them away, almost like Invisible Woman. She's being used to maybe protect some combo pieces. That's my hope. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. She's at least set to move. She's clearly made for a move deck, okay? But I don't think she can see too much play in other homes because she does only have 1 power. So she does not seem very flexible. She seems very, very niche. But what about in those niche homes, in those move decks? Well, as I mentioned, it's actually very tough, and it's going to range. The pink is what I'm hoping for Madam Web. I hope she's a good card. Maybe she's even amazing in like a one specific move deck that can become really competitive. As a minimum, though, I think she's going to be very good in move decks, and that's my hope, that she's just a staple in move. She's very good, she has a good amount of value, and you want to play her in almost every move deck. On the flip side, as I mentioned, if move does not make it to being very competitive near the top of the meta, Madam Web is probably a bad card. If she cannot help move get to the top, she's probably a flop and she will see no real play. Okay? It simply has to work. She's not like a super flexible card. Okay, she's not just going to work in stuff. It's not even like a card like Speed, where you can just put him in things, have him be kind of like a go-to flexible 3-cost card. He'll add some value. No. If she does not help out move much, she's not helping out anything, and she's got no value like War Machine. So that's what I worry about. Okay, my hope is that she's really good, but it's possible that she flops because of her poor stat line. Even though she has only 2 costs, she has half the cost of War Machine. So overall, I would say if you're a move player, I think she's a fairly safe pickup. You're at least going to be able to experiment with her. She cannot be worse than Hercules was on release. That's like impossible. She's going to be better than original Hercules. She's going to be better than current Hercules, even, most likely. If you're a move player, I think you're going to want to go after her. Almost certainly. If you're not a move player, I think you have to wait and see, okay? Again, I'm not saying guaranteed to be awful, but if you're not playing move, I would keep my eye out on this card before opening, especially the Spotlight Week having Silk, which is basically no value. If you already own Eliath, I would really use this week as a wait and see. See how she performs. See if she performs well, and if so, is it just in one specific move deck? Do you play move? If not, can you play her in something else, or is she only performing well in that one move deck? Okay, it is an important question. I think she's a fun card, but she might be really pigeonholed to just one specific move deck. Hopefully it's a bit more, though. So that's just my recommendation. Give it a couple days. Wait until Friday. Even up until Monday, a day before she's out of spotlights, if needed, to evaluate. Watch some streamers. Watch some YouTube vids. Go watch Snap Judgments. Watch Glazer's evaluation of her. And see what people are thinking a few days into her release, okay? Because that's really when we're going to start seeing how it's going to be. Now, there might be a lot of Red Guardian. It might be hard to tell at first if there's just Red Guardian everywhere. But I would definitely wait a couple days unless you're a dedicated move player through and through. So those are my thoughts and predictions on Madam Web and my worries. I'm genuinely concerned. I see the hype, but I see that the hype doesn't always deliver. So let me know what you think of Madam Web in the comments. What you think her best combos are, if I didn't name any that you're thinking of, and down below. And if you have any other exciting decks that are non-move decks, what non-move cards can she synergize? Like I mentioned the Wong or the Black Panther. Let me know what you're excited to try out from Madam Web. Until then, stay positive. I'll see you next time.